Hey, welcome back to the channel. I am Frog Dad, and this week we are going to be having our first installment of our new show, 3-episode rule, where I'll be taking a deep look into the first 3 episodes of a new series and determining whether you should watch it or if I'll continue to watch it. To determine that, we'll look at qualities such as the story, the art and animation, as well as the sound design, and the overall cool factor that it brings. And of course, with all of this, we'll want to pay attention to the characters that bring all of those factors to life. This week, we'll be taking a look at Jujutsu Kaisen, the new big hit series from Shonen Jump. I'll be getting into all the things that make the show unique and what has caused people to claim it as the next big series. Let's see if they're right after this. The general synopsis of the show is main character Itadori Yuji stumbles into the world of curses and the sorcerers who vanquish them after he ends up swallowing an ancient special grade curse that causes him to become a vessel for the ancient king of curses, Sukuna. From there, he has to work with the sorcerers to track down the previously indestructible curses, allowing him to consume them and fuse with them, at which point he will be executed, not only killing him, but all of the curses that he has consumed up to that point, wiping out Sukuna forever. If that sounds intriguing to you, I suggest you go watch the show, form your own opinions, then come back, see how they compare to mine. But if you need a little bit more convincing, or maybe just someone to bounce your excitement off of, stick around. But be warned, I will be including spoilers for the first 3 episodes of Jujutsu Kaisen because I believe that they are integral to explaining the pros and the cons of the series and to give everything justification. So if you're okay with that, then let's jump in to our first subject. Since I gave an overall synopsis before, here I would just like to highlight a few key things about the storytelling that I think are worth mentioning. There are these really nice scenes sprinkled in throughout the series. In the first episode, there's these little moments showing Yuji going to pick up flowers, and while sitting at a crosswalk, he's holding them and trying to just nudge them away from a baby reaching out their hands from a neighboring person. Now, these little moments really bring in a feeling of a bigger world that he is just one person living within. Now, reasons that this is important, apart from just being a nice thing to see, which normally we don't get to in shonen, it also adds to your desire for these heroes to overcome the curses once you find out about them. You are now giving people to ground the world's sense of realism. Typically, when we're watching a show and we see people look out over a city or something of the like, and they say, "We need to save the people. Everyone is important." You don't have anyone to jump onto. It's a phenomenon in human psychology where as soon as numbers get too large and you can't associate a single individual with something, you completely space out, you don't care. That's why the impact of hearing that, let's say, Bob Jefferson down the street has passed away will leave a much stronger impact on you than, unfortunately, if you were to hear that, say, 1,000 miners in Chile got trapped in a mine after an earthquake. So now, moving forward, when the characters say things like, "We need to save them, lives are precious, we need to help people," you can picture the flower shop lady or the baby grabbing for the flowers at the crosswalk. Giving these people to hold onto and ground your sense of what's at stake really boosts the drama in the series, and the show managed to accomplish that with 2 5-second clips in the first episode just as a small transition. It's really something that I think other shows should start picking up on and trying to accomplish in their own series. The subtleties in the show really do continue when Yuji finally does make his way to the hospital and he starts interacting with his ill grandfather. The way that they talk, like they're both trying to teach each other. This earnestness isn't something that I normally see in shonen series where emotions are generally taken out to the hyperbole. "I want to save them," you scream, you run, or things are utterly tragic, a whole city wiped off the map. It takes away the small moments where this series really builds on them. So when the grandfather talks and he speaks boastfully and he tries to show a big demonstration of energy, you know that it's in a way to try to cause people not to worry about him. He just wants to be left alone. But when Yuji speaks to him, you can tell that he just wants his grandfather to stop putting on this act and to relax before he passes away so that his final days can be peaceful and about him just being himself. Now, the way that Yuji says this is done very casually. It's done in a way where if you've ever had a sick relative or someone that's been sick for a long time, there's part of you that after a while of living with it, and while it is sad, it starts to kind of be your normal. You put it off, it doesn't really phase your mind too much, because you feel, in a sense, whether you speak it aloud or not, that if you don't mention it, it won't be real. But at the same time, it's something that in the background you've just grown to accept. It's not something that I really expected in a show about fighting giant monsters, but it's these really tiny few second interactions between these two characters that makes you feel that a lot more time has passed than it has, but in a good way, not like you're bored, just like you're really getting to know these people. It makes you feel like their lives didn't start when the camera started rolling. They've been going for years, and you're just now coming into a select part of them. This subtle maturity is such a welcomed addition, because when you finally do get to Yuji listening to his grandfather's last words, it is just beautiful. Now, I'll talk about it a little more in the sense of art and animation, but watching Yuji's face slowly start to realize that what he is listening to are quite possibly the final words that his grandfather is going to say to him. And as this unfolds, the weight of what he is saying starts to settle in. Whereas at the start of the speech, he wasn't paying too much attention. He's trying to set up flowers in a vase. He's just kind of moving around the room. It's just Grandpa talking again. But as it unfolds, and as the emotions start to connect with him, it's the little lifts of eyebrows, the little sunkenness in the eyes that Mappa really, really nailed. Obviously, there's a lot to talk about them in their form of action, but in these small moments, those little details, they absolutely hit the nail on the head for, really bring it home. And when things finally do succumb to the worst events that they could, watching him deal with this and dealing with it alone really gives you an insight to the maturity that settles underneath of his childish exterior. And I noticed another thing with the grandfather. He tries to tell Yuji about his parents, but Yuji brushes him off. Now, since we haven't seen them yet in the series, and Yuji is the one taking care of his grandfather, we can assume that his parents, like many shonen protagonists, are dead. But later, when he's filling out paperwork, Yuji says that he's never experienced anything like this before. It's subtle, but those two little pieces spread about 2 minutes apart in the episode makes me believe that this is small foreshadowing for something that's going to come up with his background and possibly his genealogy later on in the series. And getting it out of the way now and foreshadowing it here is going to lead a lot more credibility to it when they make that reveal. Unlike, to give a comparison, Bleach, where Ichigo seemed to get new genetics every arc that he just needed to have to overcome the villains of that arc. So now, we've seen the foreshadowing. It's been set up in episode 1. We can always go back to it. We can point to that exact moment and say that's when it showed up. He plotted it out from the beginning, totally called for. That kind of setup, that kind of dedication, it really gives me faith for the author's vision for this series and the fact that he is setting it up to be long running. We can see the differences in series that didn't realize they were going to go on too long, and the plot kind of feels very patchwork the further along you go, versus a series like, let's say, One Piece, where it's been going for over 20 years, but every new addition to the world and even a little bit of the retconning still feels natural because it's so vast and everything's been built up very early on. Another thing to mention with this series is perhaps its most important feature, and that is going to be the motivation for these characters to be doing what they are doing. Now, we can see cause and effect moving characters through a story with the rippling damages that unfold just due to actions that happen around them. But this makes characters very reactionary, and that's far less interesting than someone who has their own motivation, propelling them forward internally. Because without having that internal drive and that internal motivation, anything that the characters do is going to feel a little hollow. It's going to feel generic. It's going to feel very typical shonen, if you will, where it's just we have to save the people because they are the people and we are the heroes and the good guys. There is a place for that. There are series like that that I enjoy. But if you don't give a character their own goals to strive for, their own B story running in the background continually. It all feels hollow and it kind of falls apart. Now, this is what episode 2 sets out to handle, and they handle it beautifully. In episode 2, Yuji is forced to confront what his own motivations are, and in doing so, he initially shouts out the classic shonen lines. It was someone's dying wish. If I don't, people will get hurt. And the person who's forcing him into the scenario doesn't accept them. Those excuses are rejected because they are not strong enough for the life that he is about to lead. That if those are his reasons for doing what he is setting out to do, that he will grow to resent them, because those motivations come from other people and not from himself. That if he were to get into a scenario where things got too hard, too bleak, and he died or suffered a fate worse, would he grow to hate his grandfather for imposing this dying wish upon him? Would he hate the people who he felt compelled to save because they requested it? Those motivations are just too weak. They're not good enough for the harsh life that awaits him. So instead, he is forced to find a reason within himself to compel himself to move forward and deal with all of these tragedies. And the reason that he finds is great. It's great because it's simple. And it's something that we can all connect with, whether we want to admit it or not. His reasoning for wanting to do this is selfish. He doesn't want to feel bad about ignoring this cause. That if he were to walk away now, if he were to not pursue this, knowing that it's something he needs to do, sure, he could pass his days, he could relax, he could read a book, he could hang out with friends, but in those small moments between, when he can't find something to distract himself with, that's when he'll remember. And he'll think, oh no, someone's probably dying right now because of these curses. It's a bummer. It's a selfish reason, and that makes it feel real, because we can all relate to it. Because I know that if I put something off and I don't do it when I'm supposed to, and bad things happen, I feel bad. And we don't want to feel bad. So his motivation, not just being I want to save people, but being that if I don't, it's not that they die that is the thing I want to avoid. It's what I'm going to feel about their death. And knowing that information combined with the fact that he is the only one capable of doing the task set before him, it also adds another layer of selfishness to it, where he wants to feel special. And we all want to feel special. That's why I'm doing this. I want to feel like my opinions matter to someone at all. I've set up multiple lights. I've tried to figure out how to turn an apartment into a studio just to get that little ounce of numbers on a screen that tell me that I'm special and that I'm important, this mattered. And that's exactly the kind of selfishness that is absent from more general heroes, but it is here in Yuji. He acknowledges it. He wants to be the hero because it's something only he can do, and that will make him feel special, and it will keep the bad feelings away. And my God, would we not want to keep the bad feelings away? And so all of this, all of it, it's just to keep his conscience clear. It's to do something good so that he can not just sleep at night, but not regret the way that he lived, even if it means dying. You can, of course, regret the way you died. You died. But to regret the way that you lived is so much worse. It's not one moment. It is a continual series of moments of regret. And that's what he wants to avoid in his selfishness. And that is his motivation for moving forward. And that is real. And that's something I can get behind. So not only am I in it for the classic shonen trope jumps of this is a story, these are heroes, we have to save the people, power systems, and all that. I'm in it because I can see the motivation for myself into this character, and it feels real to me. Okay, I know that last bit was really heavy, but don't worry about it, because I want to take a special moment to just make a note of how funny this show is. There's a great balance between these serious and gruesome situations and these bizarre characters and their attitudes toward them, where everyone seems to have a sense of humor and they're all kind of trying to jab jokes around just to keep levity of everything, but also it feels genuine to who they are, that's the responses they would have. And it's found the balance between doing that and keeping these characters intact and keeping the story having funny, upbeat moments, but not detracting from the seriousness of these situations. It's really an immaculate accomplishment for the show. And clearly the levity is very needed in this series. His grandfather dies in the first episode. We learn that these curses are brought about by groups of negative feelings. So clearly things are gonna get heavy. So the levity is so needed. And it really comes into its own in the third episode when we get our final member of our four main characters, Nobara. When she joins in, her and Yuji start joking around, and they're both country kids who are really excited to be in Tokyo, and their teacher, Gojou, I'm gonna mispronounce names, just stick with me. But when the teacher says, hey, we're gonna take a tour of Tokyo, and they get all excited, it's like, yeah! And it's totally in their characters to do that. And then it's totally in Gojou's character to whiplash them and go, yeah, we're taking a tour to this cursed warehouse, and we gotta solve it, because that's why we're sorcerers, that's what we do. And they're so fucking bums. It's hilarious. It's great. It's a great precursor to what they're about to do. So, and seeing these characters be able to bond over being goofballs together, and seeing Gojou be excited for getting them riled up, and then be even more excited at being foil to their excitement that he started, once and for all proving that yes, he does indeed wake up with a case of the fuck-arounds every single day. Next, we'll be moving on to first up, our main character, Itadori Yuji. Now, from the first moment that we see him, we can really start to piece together the type of person he's about to be. He calls his sick grandfather. He shows concern for him. He's clearly a caring person, right? But then, in the next scene, we see him at school, not in a uniform, just hanging out with his friends, seemingly lackadaisical. So we get the sense that he is both responsible, but doesn't take himself too seriously. This will be compounded over the first 3 episodes as he continually breaks world records, jumps into fights to help his friends, consumes those cursed fingers, and ultimately ends up joining the very sorcerers who are going to execute him with little hesitation. He takes the destruction of those fingers very seriously, but he doesn't seem to fully realize, or at least pay much mind to, the fact that that means his own death. So you combine this sense of responsibility with this laid-back style, mix it with his clothing, and he comes off as a pretty cool, good guy that has so much potential, he doesn't need to worry too much about the rest of life's worries. However, he doesn't think of himself as anything special, at least pre-finger. So he gets caught up in the regular worries, like the rest of us, somehow making him relatable, while at the same time clearly being some athletic god that is inhabiting another fucking high schooler from Japan. Overall, he's a great main character with enough personality to make him feel unique, but vague enough to make the audience be able to impose themselves on his better qualities and attribute them back to themselves. Megumi Fushiguro is the first sorcerer that we meet in the series, not counting the flash forward scene at the very start. And his personality is pretty clear-cut right from the beginning. He is a standard straight man, at least for now. He has a good sense of justice and duty and responsibility, but he does still have a sense of humor, so he doesn't come off quite like a stick in the mud. He doesn't mind other people joking around, but he is definitely the serious member of the group at this point, and honestly, I think moving forward, it's pretty safe to say that's the role he's going to stick in. And I mean, you can even see this in the ED, where he is the only person out of the main group that isn't dancing. He's the serious introvert of the group, and that's completely fine. It's a role that is nice to see represented, and it's going to be needed to allow the other characters' dynamic personalities to bounce off of. Nobara Kugisaki is introduced in episode 3, and pretty much out the gate makes her case for being best girl of this season. She is irritable, she is confident, she is powerful and obviously pretty, but there are these hints and these notions at a much deeper nature that resides under those surface level traits. We really see this start to come to play when she is introduced into a hostage situation. We see her calculate her way through it, realizing well, it would be better for all of us to allow me to live and them to die, because if I die, they'll die too. So I should really just focus on saving myself, because that's the best net answer to this problem. But then we see what makes her a hero, someone worth following, where despite seeing this calculation, despite knowing that that's the way she feels and that that is somewhat the correct answer, she still gives in. She drops her weapon. She focuses on trying to save the person, even knowing that it's probably a mistake. And it was. But seeing that characteristic and being able to hear her internal dialogue gives us a much deeper understanding of this character in a much shorter amount of time than was allotted to the others so far. And it really helps bring her into the group in a natural way without having to spend a whole series of episodes getting to know her. We do also get a glimpse into her backstory, which I do look forward to learning about more later on, and I'm sure we'll get to it. Beyond that, she really blends into the group, being someone who can be a foil to the other members' personalities, while joining in on their antics when it matches her own interests. This is a nice contrast to Fushiguro, who, while he doesn't mind people joking around as long as they still get their work done, he doesn't often partake. And so now we have someone who can do both. I look forward to learning more about her and to watch her soften up as the series progresses, at least a little bit. I don't want her to lose her edge, but I just want to see her be more comfortable with the group, and that character progression is something that I anticipate. Satoru Gojou is the de facto leader of this group. While he may appear to be just another student, he is actually their teacher, and by far the best character introduced up to this point. Everything about him seems cool. In episode 2, when he's properly introduced, we get a demonstration of his overall strength. I've already mentioned him with his case of the fuck-arounds. He's got a very laid-back way that he holds himself. Everything about him is just off the charts, cool and intriguing. Everything about him comes through in the little motions and the way that he holds himself. He is both bright and forthcoming, yet somehow dark, unsettling, and mysterious at times. He is funny and lighthearted, but clearly also a badass that you should not joke about and mess with at your own risk. And while he's doing all of these things, he is just casually wearing a blindfold. Everything about him makes you pay attention. He steals every scene that he is in, and I do believe he's going to continue being the best character moving forward. But because he has all of these great qualities to him, it does make me worried for how long he could potentially be in the series. Meaning, I hope he doesn't die, but that hope stems from him just being my favorite character. I can't stress it enough. If none of the things that I have said make you like the show yet, watch it for him and him alone. And next, we'll be moving on to the show lets you know right up front with its opening that the animation is going to be off the charts. Every scene is littered with these little sprinkles of Sakuga, and I really like how many of the shots show the characters in large open spaces, giving you a hint that when things do go down, the action unfolds, the characters are going to have plenty of room to move around and showcase this fantastic animation that is backing them. The art and compositing is arguably on par with Studio Ufotable, and any still from this opening could be taken out and making as a wallpaper to make any weep happy. When the show finally does get going and the battles are in full motion, there isn't a single frame spared. It's pure Sakuga through and through. The quality is superb, and really one of the standout things to mention is Studio Mappa's understanding of motion in space and the way they're able to manipulate the camera around characters as they move to give you the same sense of, let's say, centrifugal force as they spin to attack, and so forth. Their understanding of just how the human body moves and how to display that momentum on screen in a 2D format is chef's kiss, superb. And it's been on display more than once already in just 3 episodes. Most series would build to highlight fight scenes like this, and this show started you out the gate. It is absolutely a beautiful sight for the eyes, but I think you can see the quality in the director and how those beautiful large Sakuga battle moments are balanced by these smaller, more intimate moments, like I mentioned earlier with seeing the facial reactions of these characters. Seeing that both of these factors have been given arguably equal treatment shows that him as a director knew how to balance his budget and his staff to make sure that all moments feel equally important. There's also something to be mentioned that most of these characters, while they are talking, are also doing something else. It's really nice to see, instead of just stationary lip flaps. And then as soon as the action starts, you get whiplash as everything just kicks up out the fucking moon. The overall art style has a nice use of thick strokes and a slightly blockier style than normal, but in a good way. I think it really caters itself to giving all of these characters and their locations more weight in this world. The color palette is very interesting to me because while it isn't necessarily dark, it instead uses a wide variety of shades, making already existing colors slightly darker or slightly lighter. These shades really let the atmosphere of these curses and the areas that they inhabit sink in and give you just kind of like this creepy feel, and it accomplishes this without just going black for everything, just goth all on the walls and ceilings 24/7. It just takes the color palette that existed in earlier scenes and tones it down just a little bit without being something completely new, so it feels natural and fluid. But again, with the direction, they do know that when these scenes aren't happening, there are many gorgeous shots of scenery and locales where they expand the palette, they fill it with tints and shades, and they just blow it up, and it again looks gorgeous, but in a seamless, natural way. I'm not an expert in any way, but I feel like just taking a moment to point out this difference between just having a dark color palette and making a balance between shades and tints is very nice. It is often overlooked, and this way things don't just end up looking like every garbage DC movie, but just seeing this balance between these small moments, these color palettes, the big action scenes, and everything tied up together in this beautiful, seamless way really gives me confidence in Studio Mappa on this production, even while I know they are balancing several other high-quality productions as well. Next, we'll be moving on to sound design in the hospital in the brief shots after the grandfather's passing is immaculate. The silence is only broken by Yuji packing a bag and erasing his grandfather's presence from the room, taking a glance at the bed that he occupied only moments before. Through the sound, you can really feel the sense of hollowness and the loneliness in that room, and it's done using the absence of sound instead of forcing in an overpowering score to force you to feel something. Being able to create a believable and a moving scene through music and Foley is an incredibly important skill, and it takes a long time to master, and it absolutely has its place. But being able to remove both of those things to create a silent scene that is still able to make the viewers discover the emotion that you want to feel on their own from the inside instead of being forced upon them by overpowering sounds really does show the mastery of this craft. Seeing that the studio was able to understand this, to implement it, and for it to work as well as it did, at least for me, is a great sign. As far as the curses go, as they are introduced, with every movement that they make, with every little sound that emanates out of them, it's done in this wet, squishy, gross way where they just feel repulsive to your ears alone before you ever see them. Now, they are creepy when you see them, but being able to hear what they sound like and the creep, it just really makes that creepiness settle in, and just that wet, fleshy sound, it makes your skin crawl in a terrible, but for the sake of the show, good way. Now, the same can be said for these curses' voices. Some of them have sound and speak, and it comes off as this kind of like wet, gargly speaker reverb sound. I don't even know how they would accomplish it, but it feels natural to what these creatures are. It feels like what they would sound like. So, yet again, claps to Studio Mappa and their sound design. Now, I don't like creepy and horror things at all, but I can appreciate what it takes to be able to do them properly, to get them to hit right. and that is what is unfolding here, so I applaud them. And I mentioned earlier in the animation section about how good the opening is, and it absolutely is. And it's a great song, and it's very catchy, and I like it. But it can eat dicks compared to the ending, which is an absolute banger, and it is the best ending of the year by far. There is no competition in my mind. It is so cool. It is so catchy, and it will stick in your mind long after the screen is off. Next, we'll be moving on to the final section that I want to talk about is simply the cool factor. Honestly, I feel like everything I could say here could just be explained by watching the ending and how amazing it is. After all, seeing that is what prompted me to make this entire section of the video at all. It's definitely the best example of the coolness in the show, but it is, by and large, not the only example of it. The way the characters are designed and hold themselves, the fashion sense that is applied to the world, how both of those things culminate in these characters and their own personalities that are on full display. All of this culminates into this sense of just that outcast cool, where the characters are being themselves and being natural, but in kind of an aloof way. Like usually when a series goes for the cool group of outcast vibe, it's with a large cast such as Black Clover or Fairy Tail, where each member has their own hyper-specific thing about them that ultimately leads into a lovable bunch of idiots most of the time. And so with an ensemble like that, it makes you feel like you want to join in, you want to be part of their friend group. But here, they're already so cool and independent, and they function perfectly fine on their own. So I feel like if I were to meet them or try to join them, I would be imposing. And you can kind of feel this with them in their own right, where as a group, they feel like they're only together because they need to be, because they're supposed to be. They wouldn't choose to hang out, but they're making the best of the situation they find themselves in. You know, that sense of independence and fun leads us to seeing them as these cool people, because for whatever reason in popular media, people who don't need others, the loner types, are what we perceive as cool, and whether we like it or not, I still get that same feeling from them. Mix that vibe with their style, the unique powers, and the world around them, and it all just combines to leave me with a feeling that this is all super cool with super cool people, a super cool world, and a cool idea, and it's just cool. It's that intangible factor to me that is going to explain whether a show is going to be a big success that people can get behind and they want to live in that world with those people, or not. It almost gives me a feeling similar to, say, Samurai Champloo or Cowboy Bebop in that cool sense, but just toned down for a younger group and a more modern age. Maybe I'm just a loser who needs some more friends, but I think overall it's a really good factor to have with your show, and it's going to serve it well now and moving forward. Jujutsu Kaisen is a fantastic new show on all fronts. If me gushing about it hasn't made it clear, I am absolutely going to continue watching this show, and I implore you to do the same. If you've watched all of this without seeing the show, then go watch it. Watch it now, right now, please. Stop. The ending of the video doesn't matter. Go see the show. It is the best show that is currently airing right now, at least that I am watching, and it does have the ability to be the next big series in shonen. Is it right now? No, but it's only had 3 episodes. That's why it's the 3 episode rule. But for the things that I've laid out, I do feel that it has the potential to become the next big show. Don't let this one get away from you. Don't be that guy who wants to get into One Piece but doesn't want to watch 1,000 episodes. There's 3 right now. Get into it now so that 5 years from now, you don't have to be that dumbass who hasn't started the show that everyone's talking about. So that's it. Let me know what you thought about the video, about the series overall. Will you be picking it up, sticking with it? Are you going to drop it? Who's your favorite character? Comment below, let me know, and of course, please remember to subscribe and ring the bell for more videos just like this one. I try to post at least once a week. Please give the video a like, it really helps the channel to grow. You can also catch me over on Twitch. I stream every Tuesday and Thursday from 1 to 3 Eastern Standard Time. And of course, you can follow me over on Twitter for updates on all of these things and follow along with the process behind the scenes. And, you know, sometimes I just say funny stuff. But all that aside, the links are down below. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time with all things anime, gaming, and movie related. I've been ProgDad. Have a good one. Come on, I need this, Jin. I need it. I need it so bad. Like, I'll throw all these Callistas out the window. I don't give a shit. Give me my goddamn Jin. I'll throw him on him. He needs it better. There he is. There he is. Fuck it. All right. All right. Whatever happens, I got it. Regardless of if this is great or horrible, look at that giant fucking Galio coming in. Save the day. Hey. Oh man, that Katarina had me worried in the end.